Aloha, folks. You are listening to Inside the Desert Oasis Room, episode number 141. This episode is sponsored by Tandawai Rum, the world's largest rum producer and winner of over 170 international medals in the past 4 decades. Check out their webpage at tandawaiusa.com or follow them on Facebook or Instagram at tandawaiusa. This podcast is also sponsored by the Tonga Hut. With locations in both North Hollywood and Palm Springs, California, the Tonga Hut serves classic tiki cocktails in a classic tiki setting. Dine in a secret tiki hideaway or learn about rum and rum history at one of their educational seminars. And if you're up to the challenge, take the journey to join the Loyal Order of Drooling Bastards. For information on events, Rum Club, and more, go to tongahut.com or find them on Facebook or Instagram. This episode is sponsored by the Tiki Bar T-Shirt Club, where their monthly t-shirt designs pay tribute to a Polynesian bar or restaurant from days long past. Each design is available for a limited time and will never be produced again. For the collectors out there, be sure to check out their subscription program, where they offer a discounted 3, 6, or 12-month plan, or you can always buy shirts one at a time. For more information and to check out this month's shirt, visit tikibartshirtclub.com. On this episode, we chat with the boys from Ixtahuele. Ixtahuele is a premier Exotica band from Sweden, comprised of musicians that are formally trained instrumentalists in classical and jazz music genres. Today, we chat with members Mattias, Johan, Wictor and Henrik about their musical backgrounds, what it's like to perform Exotica music in Sweden, and learn about their latest project, the Dharmaland Sessions, with special guest Brian Chidester, co-director of the upcoming documentary As the Wind, a biography of Exotica performer Eden Ahbez. As always, I hope you enjoy listening to this episode as much as we did bringing it to you. And if you did, hit that subscribe button. Subscribing makes it easier for you to follow our adventures. Shares on your social media pages are always appreciated, and if you'd like to help support the show, go to desertoasisroom.com to pick up some merch or make a donation. This podcast does not survive without the help of its sponsors or its listeners, so every purchase or donation, no matter the size, is always appreciated and helps keep this podcast coming to you every week. Okay, I think you're gonna like this one. Recorded from the home of Sven Kirsten, here they are, Mattias, Johan, Wictor and Henrik, along with Brian Chidester. Give it up for Ixtahuele.
Inside the Desert Oasis Room.
I'm Henrik.
My name is Wictor.
I'm Johan.
I am Mattias.
And we are Ixtahuele, and you are listening to Inside the Desert Oasis Room.
Aloha, folks, and welcome back to another episode of Inside the Desert Oasis Room. We are at Sven Kirsten's castle. Do we have a name for this? Tiki Island, he says. So,
Island.
Tiki Island here in Silver Lake, California. And we are joined by the one and only Ixtahuele. Is that how I say that?
Yeah, that's good.
that's how
Okay,
you say
perfect. The one and only Ixtahuele from Sweden. And I would like to welcome the members of Ixtahuele here. We have Wictor and Johan and Mattias and Henrik. So welcome, guys. Welcome to Silver Lake.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you for having us.
Happy to be here.
Thank you for being on the podcast. It's such an honor to have you on the show. I'm a big fan of your music. Been a fan for many, many years.
Oh, yeah.
And I think it's been a while since you've been to the U.S., right?
That was two years ago.
Has it been 2 years?
Yeah, too.
I thought it was longer than that. I guess I missed you 2 years ago, the last time you were here. So it's nice to see you. So,
Nice to see you too.
oh, thank you. So let's start by familiarizing our audience about your music and about the musical style that you perform.
Mm-hmm.
For our listeners that are unaware of Ixtahuele, they are an Exotica band that plays basically Exotica music from Sweden, which is a little bit unusual to me.
Mhm.
Is that a common thing in Sweden?
No. I think we're about the only band that plays Exotica in
There
Sweden.
used to be another band called Bo Axelsson's and his Exotic Sounds, but that was many years ago.
How long ago was that?
I think they released their 10-inch album in '95, but it was only one album.
Oh, 95. That was quite a while ago.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel like that long ago, but it was.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the
Yeah.
beginning of the revival.
Right.
Something.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the revival even started there in Sweden. It made its way to Sweden, the Exotica music revival.
Mattias, do you know when Tiki Room was opened?
Not sure. Late '90s, I think.
Late 90s. And that is the only Tiki bar in Sweden. That is Tiki Room in Stockholm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is it similar to Tiki here in the United States?
Is
Yeah.
it?
It adapted the same cocktail menu.
Oh, they
You know,
did.
like-
Okay.
Yeah, like
okay.
the classic tiki drinks.
Okay.
And actually, our record label, Subliminal Sounds, the CEO Stefan was part of opening that tiki bar.
Oh, really? Okay.
So he was kind of part of, like you said, the revival of tiki, but in Sweden, in a very small scale compared to
and
the
I
USA.
think he actually like ordered the material for this tiki bar in Stockholm from the Oceanic Arts.
So it did come from Oceanic Arts also.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Many of the decors, and then they had some like Swedish carvers that did some like this Scandinavian touch on the tiki.
Right.
Yeah, so
Right. Okay. Let's start with how all of this got started for you guys. I want to talk about your musical backgrounds first because I think that Exotica music, as I mentioned in Sweden, it seems unusual.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm curious how you found your way into doing that musical style. Why don't we go around the table and talk about each of your backgrounds and tell us what kind of music you were playing and how you found your way to Exotica. Why don't we start with Wictor?
Yeah, sure. Well, actually, the one and only person to ask this question to is Mattias, because he is the one who introduced this music to each one of us.
To all of you?
Yeah.
Okay.
And it simply began with luau, and Mattias was DJing and mixing the cocktails, and we were all there and just said, wow, what is this all about? We have to do something more about it. And we've been playing together for many years.
So what were you playing before you were playing Exotica music?
Right. So we have all different backgrounds, musical backgrounds. And I am an orchestral percussionist. So
Oh,
I've
interesting.
been classical trained.
Okay. Did you go to music school?
Yeah, music school.
So
and-
you studied specifically orchestral music?
Yeah, exactly. So I've been in touch with a lot of the music. For example, like the impressionism. Is that the same word in English?
Yeah.
Impressionism, like Ravel, Bolero, Debussy, which has been, I think, a very big influence and inspiration to Les Baxter and his like orchestral arrangement. So that's like music that I found really speaks to me.
Okay.
So yeah, so that is what I enjoy about it, to see the connections to the classical music.
Is classical music something that is widely listened to in Sweden?
I think it's music that speaks to people who are interested in culture, in the arts, and into music.
Okay.
Not like for mainstream listeners. I don't think classical
Right.
is something.
But we still have a lot of funding for classical music.
Yeah,
we have
do.
like opera houses and concert halls that are funded by
So it's
the
still a
government.
very popular style of music to listen to there. Because the first thing I think of when I look at you guys, you're all very young. So
Thank
classical music is not something that I would think of that as far as the kind of music that young people listen to. So I find that also unusual. Right.
I think the first CD I bought was like the best of classical music. And
Oh,
I was
really?
like 9 years old or something. It was
Okay.
3-pack CDs.
Is it like the best of classical music in the stores and ABBA? Is that it? Is that
Yeah, that's the only shit we have in Sweden. You know, best of classical and ABBA. Yeah.
So Johan, are you also a classical music trained musician?
No, well, partially I am, but mostly I'm a jazz drummer.
Jazz drummer.
Yeah,
okay.
Me and Wictor, we knew each other since we were 11. We started playing in a youth drum corps together. Was it like when we were 11, and we had like the same background, but at one point you had to choose between like the classical percussion like marimbas and the drum kit, and I chose the drum kit, and he chose the marimba and the classical instruments. So I studied jazz for many years.
Were you also in musical school with Wictor?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah, we went to musical high school together.
Okay.
And then at the academy, we were there at about the same time.
Yep.
Yeah, but not the same programs. I was in improvisation, jazz, and he was in classical.
How does Mattias enter the picture?
Well, he actually also started in this youth drum corps, but he was a bit older. He was like 15, I think.
When I entered.
We were at same age. Yeah,
we were at the
we're the same age, and he had long hair, but
I was a
like metal.
Oh, really?
It's kind of funny. We went on a lot of tours with that drum corps, and after a few years, Mattias cut his hair to this, and that was like when he was 16, I think, and he has kept the same. Since
my gods were like Cannibal Corpse and Morbid Angel at the time, but
oh yeah,
then I grew up with Elvis and Beach Boys, and like from my father some jazz music like Don Miller. So, but I during high school I cut off my hair.
Transition.
Went back to Elvis and that stuff and Johnny Burnett. And,
Were you feeling like you just wanted to do something different? Were you looking for a change?
I don't know.
Were you being rebellious?
No, the thing was, there's a Swedish band called the Coffin Shakers, which plays more like country music, but more vampire themed country music. It's a small thing, but it's close to. I discovered psychobilly music, and I had a thing for rockabilly music way before, and so I am somehow like the rockabilly thing, and I still do, and I did that when I was young, and I also the last few years on the way to work I always listen to death metal because it's like Cannibal Corpse is one of my one of the bands I really, one of my favorites. Yeah. Really. And I there are, as I got older, I realized their music is, the rhythms. There's really hard to track any harmonies in that music because it's unmelodic, but it's like the rhythms is so lively and it's just beautiful.
So everybody should go home and listen to Cannibal Corpse.
Now what
what we're saying.
What about Henrik here? Let's bring Henrik into the picture.
Yeah, well, I guess my main thing in music has always been jazz. I discovered jazz quite early, and it really spoke to me, like the improvisation. And
do you have a favorite performer? Or was there an influence?
Oh, there's so many. There's this Swedish piano player called Jan Johansson, or I guess in English Jan Johansson.
Johansson.
Which he died quite young. I don't know how old he was, but
like
he
35.
Yeah,
or something.
He actually recorded. He did a really great recording of Nature Boy. I guess are going to talk about that later. Nature Boy and Eden Ahbez.
Yeah.
So he's a big inspiration for me, but also like all the old players, like Herbie Hancock. Maybe he's still alive, so he's
right. Not as old as some of the other really.
But then I also
classical
played
jazz players.
No, like George Shearing and Bill Evans.
Okay.
Those kind of guys.
Okay. So I'm seeing from what you're all saying, classical music and jazz music, that is a bit of a natural path to Exotica music.
Yeah, I feel like, the harmony and the melodies, they is all over the place, both in jazz and classical and in Exotica. It feels like it's a mixture of all those stuff.
So who writes the music for you guys? Because
it's mainly Mattias.
So is Exotica music written the same way other forms of music are written? Is there a structure or is it different?
I think it's different from I write within a few different genres, but when it comes to Exotica, you don't have that build up the same way, like intro, like a verse and the bridge and the chorus, that stuff. It's sometimes it is, but it's writing the songs, and sometimes just a lead sheet, and sometimes there's I write an arrangement of the song, the whole song through, which would be more of the classical approach.
Yeah, I can really feel like in some of your arrangements, Mattias, there's a lot of impressionistic ways of writing, like setting a mood and let the melodies evolve through the piece more than having separate parts.
Yeah, and I think regarding the Exotica music that I write, I wouldn't put any later influences. My main influences for writing Exotica material would be the pre-60s and the impressionism.
That's a hard word.
It's a hard word. What do you say?
Impressionist, right?
Impressionist classical music, and
our audience will forgive that your first language is not English.
Forgive us.
But
you still speak better than most of the audience.
Right.
Thanks, Boris. But it's and then because that language like that language of harmonies comes from the classical music that became into jazz music. So like the progressions and the chord progressions and the like the melodies is something. It comes from earlier, and
sorry if I interrupt.
No, okay.
There's also an interesting connection with impressionistic music, because composers like Debussy, he was also very inspired by cultures in like Indonesia and Polynesia.
Yeah.
So it goes like full circle from there to.
So that relates. Thank you for that, Henrik, because
like
on your website, you describe your music that is heavily influenced by indigenous melodies from different regions, including the Amazon, Micronesia, Middle East, Caribbean, Indochina. So okay, so I think that's what you're probably trying to express.
Yeah, and I mean, like, and when we started, we like the main thing I think was to, like, can't speak for the whole band, but it's like my input on Ixtahuele was that, like, recreating the sounds of the 50s and 60s Exotica scene, and that was the main inspiration for me. And the inspiration from this, you can tell when you're listening to the classical works of Debussy and Ravel, and also later on, like Cyril Scott, like Lotus Land has been covered by Gene Rains and Martin Denny and all that stuff, and it's pure impressionism. And many things with, like, the jazz progressions in the harmonies. Combined with the Latin American percussion and the vibraphone in there somewhere also.
Yeah, I mean,
have to have that.
And all the percussion, as you just said. I mean, that's the main sound, I think, for the group. Like the percussion combined with vibraphone, it's like it sets the mood.
What would you guys consider the first Exotica song?
That we did? Or
No, that ever.
That's a hard one.
I know.
That's a really hard one.
But you have to answer, Mattias.
No pressure.
There's a right or wrong here.
Yeah, there's no wrong answers. I'll decide.
First,
well, actually, there's plenty of wrong answers. But
I mean, for me, I would probably say like
Turkish cymbals or something.
Oh,
no.
But do you say instruments or song?
I just song. I mean, it could be whatever. Piece.
For me, I hear a lot of Exotica in Rite of Spring by Stravinsky.
Because I'm going with, like, well, okay, you guys are going deep.
Yeah, I'm going deeper.
Like
I could say Quiet Village would be the easy answer, maybe.
Well, I was going to say, like Duke Ellington's Caravan, probably.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
It's an early one, yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Well, see, they're educated in classical music, so they're going to hear Exotica where we don't.
Right.
But like Arabesque or something.
Arabesque, Debussy.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Okay, definitely.
That's an early one. Which one?
Malagueña, La Cubana.
Oh, yeah. That's another one.
There you go.
Pre-caravan.
Pre-caravan, Malagueña.
So, let's talk about performing Exotica music in Sweden. You guys are the only Exotica band there?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What kind of audience appreciates Exotica music in Sweden? Here in the United States, it's mostly a tiki-centric kind of audience.
Yeah.
Is it the same there?
The type of gigs that we do in Sweden are mainly background music, mingle gigs. We have done concerts with a sitting, listening audience as well. But it has been a lot with just people just setting the mood for a wedding or something like that. Here we have a much more an audience that is much more focused.
So it's less underground here than it is there. It's more underground there. Would you say that? Would you call it underground?
We would probably go under another. We would, yeah, exactly. We would fall under another category. Because the tiki scene is non-existent, and
we don't have a lot of Exotica bands here either. You know, there's only a few.
But I think the question who appreciates it's a bit more wider, because we have one element that is very common with a lot of other kinds of music. You know, the rhythm. The groove, the thing that people understand, the percussion, the thing that make people move, and we can play for many kinds of audience. I feel, for instance, we played at a nostalgia festival a month ago, and there was a lot of
cars from the 60s.
Cars from the 60s,
like
and they listen to rock and roll,
so is there
and we had this show for them. It was not so many people, but they understand it, even though it's new to them. It's kind of weird what we're doing.
From the same time period.
Yeah,
so
they understand the groove, they understand the rhythm, and we had some people. There was one guy standing in front of us the whole time, and I was wondering, is he gonna punch us, or I ask for like the boss? But afterwards, he was like, "This was amazing. This was the best musical experience of my life." And that's because we play something that people, even though they don't know Exotica or has any knowledge of the history of it, they understand the groove, they understand the meaning of it.
So there's a little bit of crossover with the vintage culture crowd there, like here. There's a lot of crossover with rockabilly and tiki and surf. It's all mid-century. Okay, that makes sense. Okay, so it's great to see you here in the United States. I want to tell our audience about what brings you here. So let's talk about that. Who wants to start with, or out of the four of you, who wants to tell us about why you're here in the U.S.?
Johan? Yeah.
Okay.
We're here because we're recording the sequel to Eden's Island by Eden Ahbez, or Eden Ahbez, depending who you ask how to pronounce it. And we got the question from Brian through our record label, Subliminal Sounds, and Brian found a lot of sheet music written by Eden Ahbez.
So Brian is here. Is he around here? Is he inside the house?
Yeah, he's sitting over there listening. And
let's bring Brian onto the show here, because I want to have Brian tell us his story. Is that okay, Brian? Can we interview you for a little bit?
That's fine.
Awesome. Thanks for joining the show. Appreciate it so much.
You're welcome.
Let's introduce Brian, and I hope I say your last name correctly. Brian Chidester?
That's right.
All right. So welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Brian found some long-lost Eden Ahbez, and Brian corrected us right earlier. He said it's Ahbez, right?
Ahbez, yeah.
Ahbez, not Ahbez. And he found some music that was registered with the Library of Congress. Can you tell us how you found that?
I don't know how much detail you want, and you can tell me how much too much is. But when I was 18, I got into Ahbez through the CD reissue of Eden's Island in 1995, and I was looking for anything else that he did besides Eden's Island and Nature Boy, and so I did quite a lot of research for about 14, 15 years, and then I decided I'd sort of met everybody who knew him, and I found all the records that I could find that were released by him or other artists. And I went to the Library of Congress to go through all their microfilm and old records, phone books, census records, to try to fill in the gaps of what I hadn't figured out yet about Ahbez's story. And I went, I think, 47 times to the Library of Congress in 2 years. And the last time I went, I saw that there was a copyright record but it didn't say what was in it. So I tried to order the copyright record, and I had to jump through quite a lot of hoops for 4 years. And then in 2013, they finally called me up and said, "We pulled the record from our archive in Kentucky. It's here in Washington, D.C. Come down. You have 3 weeks to view it." And I didn't know what was there, but I went down, and they put me in a private room, turned an overhead light on, put some white gloves in front of me, and plopped the box down. And when I opened it up, there was over 300 lead sheets in there of songs that Ahbez wrote but never recorded. So
that's amazing.
Yeah.
How did you feel about that when you saw that for the first time?
It was like I died and went to heaven.
Yeah.
As somebody who had been tracing the story since I was very young and had gone through a lot of ups and downs and actually met a lot of people that knew him and they became my friends, this was sort of like finding the Holy Grail.
Yeah, yeah.
Did you read the music and know what it sounded like by looking at the notes, or...?
Yeah, I read music and I play recreationally, but I don't play like these guys. I could demo the songs over the years, and I have a flute teacher, and she's more dexterous than I am.
But I mean, when you were reading it with your white gloves on in the Library of Congress, were you like, this is going to sound amazing?
Yeah, I could hum it, and I could also see at a glance that certain tracks overlapped with other tracks. So I could understand that, especially the stuff from 1961 to 1963 had a cohesive quality. So I knew that there was a follow-up to Eden's Island there.
So I did some research on Eden Ahbez, and he's a very interesting person. So looking at like the how his music changed over the years. In his younger years, he played a different style of music. He was playing jazz. I don't know how accurate some of this is, but it looks like when he arrived in L.A., he was working at a health food store with it was like raw foods and that kind of thing, and it changed him into being more of that free kind of that free thinker. That he became kind of hippie-like after he came to L.A.
Yeah, I would say that's inaccuracy.
That's inaccurate. Okay.
Yeah, he was born and raised in Brownsville in Brooklyn. He was a Jewish kid.
Right.
He was orphaned at the age of 9. He spent time in an orphan asylum in Crown Heights, also in Brooklyn. He learned some Hebrew melodies. He was adopted and grew up in the Midwest. And after the Great Depression, he sort of started becoming a wanderer, itinerant musician. He had some knowledge of songwriting, and also he was the orchestrator of his high school band. So he made his way throughout the Midwest trying to write songs and make music and make some money, but he didn't have any success, so he kept wandering further and further so that he could find warmer climates, and he ended up in Miami around 1943. He changed his name officially from George McGrew to Eden Ahbez or Eden Ahbez, and then he migrated to California about 1946, and that's when he really starts publishing Nature Boy, the Nature Boy Suite, and some other songs.
Popularized by Nat King Cole.
Nat King Cole, right.
And it looks like it was in the late 50s when he started meddling with Exotica style of music. Is that correct? Or is that also an inaccuracy? Yeah,
I would say, already by the time of Nature Boy, and especially songs like The Shepherd from 1949 and Land of Love also from 49 and End of Desire from 1950, you start hearing vibraphones, you start hearing handmade drums, and actually critics from Billboard start calling his music Exotica a year or two before Les Baxter. You start hearing those kind of haunting, ethereal, Neptune's Kingdom-inspired vocals on tracks in the 40s. So I think he was sort of proto-Exotica in a way, but I think he got more serious about instrumental music from about 1956 with Bob Romeo's Aphrodisia album, which Eden wrote 3 songs on, and then on up to Eden's Island. That's kind of when he becomes another Exotica auteur next to Baxter and Denny and Lyman.
Now, there's supposedly a number of master tapes, photos, and other things with a person by the name of Joe Romersa.
That's right.
Is that related to the music that you found?
So Joe worked with Eden for the last 8 years of Eden's life, from 1987 to 1995. So the work that they did included a lot of new songs, and it also included a lot of melodies that he'd recycled over a 50-year period. But the work that I found in the Library of Congress and introduced to Ixtahuele and that they recorded over the last 9 days was much earlier. It was actually a body of work from 1961 to 63 that would have been the follow-up to Eden's Island. But what happened with Eden's Island was it only sold 100 copies, so the label just didn't give him another chance. And then his wife contracted bone cancer. So there was no real opportunity for him to record the Dharmaland Suite. Fast forward to 1995 and so on, and now Eden's Island has gone through 9 pressings, and it's considered a major part of Tiki history. And so now the Ahbez is relevant, his music is relevant, and there's an audience that's hungry for more. So now is the time to introduce what would have been the follow-up to Eden's Island. And also, I think it took musicians as talented as Ixtahuele to bring this to life. Because it really was just chicken scratch. It was ideas that this man who was in a bad situation in his life wrote down, protected, sent to the Library of Congress. But, I think he planted those seeds and waited for somebody else to appear in life to dig it out and bring it to life. It just wasn't one of those times in his life where he had the opportunity to do so.
I'm curious what the band thought about the first time they started to perform some of this music.
Actually, we haven't performed it yet.
No?
No, we have been in the studio for the last 9 days.
And that's what I mean. I mean, the first time you started playing the music, you had to have an opinion about it or a feeling.
Yeah, the first thing that I thought of, that there's not much. There's the melodies.
Yeah.
There are not a lot of harmonies written down. There are no suggestions of tempos or grooves. So we had to just sit down and think about how would he do this?
Yeah, so you had to fill in some gaps, huh?
Yeah. And it was a really cool experience. It's here's an idea from a person who is dead, and it felt like almost having a conversation with that person by
That's an awesome description. That's a great description, you're having, and then you have to get into his head. Figure out what he was thinking creatively.
And you
the
try
music
some ideas with the melodies, and this might work, and then the melodies speak to you, but now there's this part coming, and so it's back and forth.
So Brian said that there was over 300 pieces of music there. How did you choose which ones you decided to start working on?
Brian shows. But he shows shows very good tunes.
Do you have a favorite of the ones that you're playing? Is there something that connected with you guys?
The thing is, when we've been in the studio, taking each song at a time, they're all becoming favorites. We've been humming those songs every night when we come home. And vad säger man? Återhämta sig.
Recover.
When we recover for the next day, but the night before, after the studio session, the Dharmaland Sessions, we've been humming those.
I love that. I love that.
And okay, let's get this tune out of our head. We must be prepared for tomorrow. It's and those melodies are still, stuck in our head. It feels, the melodies and the songs are so much closer.
I love that it's you guys that are playing this music.
So do we.
Because it's got to be a huge honor, right?
It is. It is.
But we're not only playing his music, we're playing it on some of his own instruments that he owned.
And made.
Oh, wow.
Handmade instruments.
Wow.
Handmade drums, handmade flute.
Some handmade, not handmade bells, but it was Ahbez bells.
And the cowbell that he owned.
Eden had a cowbell.
And his
And his heart.
So this is a guy that, lived and died in relative obscurity, and now he's become a bit of a legend in the legacies left behind, especially with this music that Brian has found. What do you think he would think today about what you guys are doing?
We know, because we had some of his musicians guest artists at the record, and we had Mort Wise, who is like 86, yeah, clarinet. He played with Abi in the 60s.
Wow.
And we had him over to record some songs, and when we listened to it the last time, the last thing he said was like, Eden would have loved this.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's
and we
awesome.
also worked with Joe that you mentioned. He was engineering and joining on.
Really?
The album. Yeah, it was.
Oh, interesting.
So
and
he has taken care of Eden's drums through the
years.
years.
For sure. And if I want to go back to the question, what's your favorite song? Or
Tell us.
And I don't have a favorite song, but one moment, the last song we recorded is a song called "Fire of the Soul," and Joe sang it. And that was a great moment, because
it felt like it is Eden's words. And it's sung by a person who knew him, worked with him.
Wow.
So
it
felt
was very emotional.
Yeah, that just hearing the story gives me goosebumps.
Yeah.
Right? It's amazing. It's amazing.
It really was. And
it has been a lot of those moments in the studio.
It has.
Yeah,
sure.
Wow.
People coming in and
that knew him, played with him.
It feels really deep how it connects Eden to the present.
Yeah. Wow. Wow. I'm jealous that I'm not in a position like that to bring back the legacy of somebody. You're bringing his music back to life.
I suppose,
and thankfully to Brian was able to resurrect these masterpieces that no one would have ever heard otherwise. It would have just drifted away to history, you know.
Yeah.
And what a shame that we'd never get to hear it. Thank God that Brian was able to bring that to you guys. And now we're going to all get to enjoy that.
To do it.
We're honored and we're so
happy.
Happy. We're so happy.
What is that word? Happy?
Yeah. Wow. Wow.
I mean, we're so impressed of what Brian have done with this.
Yeah.
Digging out all those lead sheets. That's amazing.
And it's amazing to really go through the songs.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, we learn about Eden and try to understand what made him write these songs.
Yeah,
where did this melody and the lyrics come from?
Yeah, it has changed through the session. I think also how we view the music.
Okay.
It's a lot of quite dark songs.
Okay.
And I don't know if that has to do with, like Brian said, his wife and his child.
He had a couple of tragic things happen to him. He lost his wife and he lost his son. His son died at a young age also.
So there's a sadness into it in the music, but it's not. It's also part of life.
Yeah.
You can feel that.
It's not tragic.
No, it's not
depression.
tragic. It's like this. It happens. What, sorry?
It's very honest.
Yeah, it's honest and it's like all things are a part of life. I think you can feel that in the music.
Wow. Well, I don't know how else to end this conversation other than, I'm speechless. Thank you, Brian, for bringing this back to the world. Thank you, Ixtahuele, for performing it in such a way that we can all enjoy it. And I assume and I assure our audience that you are bringing it the justice it deserves and the respect that it deserves. And thank you for sacrificing some of your time here in the United States. I know that you only have a few days left before you go home, so thanks for spending some of that time with us on the podcast.
Of course, we're very happy, Adrian, to be on the Desert Oasis room.
Yeah,
thank you. Appreciate it so
Thanks
much.
for having us.
And thank you, Sven Kirsten. Where's Sven? Is he inside?
Yeah, inside.
So let's publicly thank Sven for hosting this get together here at his, what does he call his home? Tiki Island?
Tiki Island above the Silver Lake. Tiki Island above the Silver Lake.
Tiki Island above the Silver Lake. And for all of our listeners that would like to hear more of your music, how about we throw out the website and the social media and all that so that everybody can find you?
Cool. It's all Ixtahuele. Ixtahuele.com, Facebook/Ixtahuele. You can find us on Spotify, iTunes, YouTube, Instagram now these days.
We'll try to
post as much as possible.
If you learn to spell the name, you'll find us.
Should we spell it for our listeners?
Yeah.
It's IXTAHUELE.
There you go. Ixtahuele. Ixtahuele.com.
A line through it.
Sorry?
Isn't there like a symbol with a line through it?
Yeah, the first I has a backwards accent.
I
Yeah.
don't know how to pronounce that.
It just looks cool.
Our name?
Ixtahuele.
Ixtahuele.
Yeah.
As long as they spell it right, they'll find you guys.
Yeah.
And for our listeners that have any questions, comments, or just want to leave a shout out for our friends here at Ixtahuele, stop by our group page on Facebook, Inside the Desert Oasis Room. You can follow us on Instagram at Polynesian Pop. And you can find previous episodes at our website, desertoasisroom.com. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
All right. Aloha.
Aloha.